I was telling you the other night, I remember I used to get, not a lot, but a handful of seniors who had to do a senior project for high school, right? And you were one of those people that came in. Then I was telling you the other night that most people had the desire to do comedy. That's why they chose that for their senior project at high school, but they would kind of half-ass it. Like, some people would come down for the initial meeting and then show up for me to sign their paperwork,
Right.
And I get it. I was the same type of student. But you were the only one that actually not only went through all the steps you're supposed to with your school, but you had like a plan. You already had a fucking like a PowerPoint plan of what you were going to do when you came in there, and you came to me and you said, I'm going to do, I believe it was 10 open mics, right? Was it 10 or 8?
So I ended up doing 3 a week, and it ended up being like about 30 open mics over the course of 2 or 3 months.
I think weren't you going to do like 10 or something? It was going to be.
So it was like 5 main genres of comedy,
Right.
1 genre a week, and there was a subgenre in each one. So 10 genres of comedy is maybe what
So when you came to me and our initial meeting, you had this PowerPoint about what I'm going to do 5 different genres of comedy. But I'm never going to mention anything to the audience about it or any of the comics. And you asked me not to mention, to comedians, the open micers,
yeah, what's
who
going
had been
on
down there for helping me build this place for a year or so, or however long, 2 years, 3 years. And I didn't say anything to anybody, because I was curious as how this was going to play out, because you were going to do, what were your 5? You remember your 5? I know you were going to do hate comedy or fucking,
so I know that
Christian comedy.
I know 1 week, I know that there was blue comedy 1 week, and there was dark comedy another week. There was anti-comedy 1 week, clean comedy 1 week, and surreal comedy.
Okay.
And then in there was like,
and didn't you do a character also too?
Yeah, musical comedy, character comedy.
Yeah.
I think these are the subgenres I'm starting to list.
So when you came in, and you started doing, I don't know the order of what you were doing. So you're just you're the new guy, right?
Yeah.
And got all these people that have been with me for a couple of years, still coming down every 4 or 5 nights a week, and the cool thing about Nut Street was the stage was across from the bar, and it was a long bar, like a little hallway to the bathrooms, and all the comedians would hang out at the bar, and watch the show. That way they could get out to the smoking area, and so every week I had a bar full of 30 comedians all the way down this bar, and they would just sit there and they would just all look over at the stage while people were on stage. And every time you went up, and you would do something completely different, and I had never said anything what you were doing. You didn't talk about it, and I would just watch I watched you a little bit, but I more so watched the reactions of the comics. They were bellied up to the bar, beer in front of them, and they're just looking, and then you could just see the expressions on their face, just like trying to like figure out this Chinese puzzle. Like what is this fucking kid who was just in here last week doing this? Now he's up there, mind fucking the crowd over here, or now he's a Christian. And I don't know who it was, but about your 3rd time in or so, 4th time in, I just remember a couple of comics turning to me and were like, why do you keep putting this guy on stage? And I was just like, I say, nah, it's good, man. He knows what he's doing. He's good. He's doing a senior project, and they were just, just a lot of head shaking going on.
Yeah. I remember Mike Van Vliet came to me like months later after I had been there.
I was going to ask you, did they try to give you advice?
Well, no. So Mike Van Vliet didn't say anything to me for months. And then finally, after like we kind of like just naturally talked a little bit off stage, he finally, after months later, was like, hey, man, I've had a number of things like this happen, like with different people. He was the first one I distinctly remember when starting comedy. But he was just like, hey, man, I got to say, I've been watching you for months and I fucking hated you like this whole time. Now that I've talked to you off stage, I understand you're like a normal person, you're like a good guy, so I just wanted to say that out loud. And we've been friends ever since then. But there's so many people that had that reaction of first knowing me from on stage and then this head shaking, what the fuck, dude? And then finally like talking to a little off stage like, oh, it's like, okay, now I understand like how much of an act this is. Yeah.
Well, and I don't even know. I mean, you know, it was a senior project, but for you, I think it was just another way for you to be creative, because you were already. I think when I met you, didn't you have some like obscene amount of YouTube videos online?
Yeah, I've been.
How long you been doing shit?
Since I was like 11. I was like hyper productive in terms of making videos, and I was very like, even though I'd never done live stand up comedy before, I was very familiar with performing in comedy sketches that I like wrote/directed, mostly not writing, mostly like improv acting, and understood the layout of like a executed joke in that format.
Right.
And so I felt like my introduction into stand-up was really not learning how to do comedy, but it was more how to translate the skill of doing it in the video film format,
right, and
like the acting format, and translate it to the stage.
Yeah. Well, and so knowing you as like just a student looking for, a fulfillment for a senior project, and then finding all that about, I immediately knew, I was like, oh, this kid is not a senior project. This is just him, like, finding another voice for his creativity, you know?
Yeah.
And, then of course you never left after coming down for whereas most people that, I think maybe one person came down and did like another open mic one night, trying to get into the scene, or, and not that anybody said he couldn't. She just never returned, basically.
Right.
And then you became a part of.
Yeah, I chose to go to school at UNCW just because I was like, I could go to the film school in like Durham, but I want to continue doing comedy here.
Yeah. And I mean, it was just such a fucking crazy. People made life decisions based on that spot.
Yes. I know I did.
Yeah. And that's great. And I'm glad you stayed, because, you helped us build. You came in a few years after we started, but you helped us build, and keep the scene going in a more positive direction.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you stayed.
Thank you.
Yeah.